are fascinatingly dangerous coming from planets in which very capability to hold life as an anomaly. The humans immediately reveal themselves to be freakishly strong compared to much of the galactic community, much of which originated from planets with a much smaller size, and by proxy, a much weaker gravitational pull in atmosphere weather, while nodal ways completely predictable really got out of hand environments would gradually change depending on where on the planet you were. However, they were generally consistent hotter tropical climates towards the closest portion of the sun and called a tundra near the poles. Never had Weaver discovered such a bizarre planet as Earth. The fact any life existed above the oceans was amazing in its own right, let alone Goonland, an event then managed to develop intelligent life on top of that. However unlikely it did create intelligent life. Humanity, once they're used to their relative hellhole, it lived on and actively made worse. That's when put up against just about any other species in the galaxy, it would win almost any time. That wish, however, only in strength, ignore. In the fact they survive on far less oxygen and can tolerate what is generally deemed harmful chemicals in their lungs far more effectively than most other species. They wouldn't have been a problem for a species with more advanced technology or intelligence. The galaxy has a share of dumb brutes, strong, bulkier races who only manage to thrive due to their sheer strength alone, and in some rare cases, hardly even made it to space, and in another case, only made it this far with outside help. These brutes were the strongest in the universe, but their poor intelligence made them easy enough to handle, especially in a large-scale war. Humanity, however, did not have such a limitation. While humanity wasn't quite the most intelligent species, and considering how far behind they seemed to be, they were far from the most advanced. The fact their intelligence ranged from average to just above average was concerning for a race so strong, pushing the strange aspects of humanity aside, such as their use of ancient animal bones for fuel and their interspecies warlike tendencies. Humanity was still isolated to Earth itself, to Washig, lie isolated in a region of the galaxy originally deemed to have little to no chance of life, or at least intelligent life. Humanity likely went through most of its history. Are you speculating whether or not other life existed? Humanity's discovery was in part an accident in a sense they didn't actually expect to find life where they did. However, on the other hand, the whole point of the mission was to find life, however decided in what was referred to as the lifeless cluster, which, while had planets capable of colonization and settlement, seemingly lacks the planets needed to develop life on his own. A survey was sent out to study this region to see if there was areas on behind that, and if possible prove that fact wrong. Eventually, the shipper search survey sent out from an independent research organization began receiving signals, fairly primitive ones, but signals nonetheless. Inatone decided to hunt down its source. Eventually, they found Earth, and as was generally protocol under the Biva Treaty, Weiss tour rules and Garlic's to handling underdeveloped, intelligent life, the survey ship took a 4-hour orbit circling the planet just short of the orbit of his moon, which itself was fairly large, a member of the survey vessel, managing to accidentally correctly predict that it was created upon another planet crashing into Earth. Eventually, they realized the true strangest and horror behind what humility had and what they were capable of, if they managed to catch up to the galactic community. Luckily, to their knowledge, humanity had yet to breach his own very difficult-to-breach atmosphere. Unfortunately, as time went, they eventually noticed something as a tellet, then another, then a third. Eventually, and noticed what they identified as a space station orbiting the planet with living members of humanity on it. Not only had humanity left their own planet, but they had people residing beyond it, and they only took them all while to notice that their presence had been very much detected before they had even settled into orbit. Humanity began sending them signals, however, due to the panic at what was effectively intended to just be a basic research mission. They left before they had time to translate them. Their search team returned telling all they had learned about humanity, and much of the galactic community began to share the same fears, while protocols the BV Treaty were put in place are but exaggerated due to humanity having already extended into space. Many within the Galactic Council debated on what to do. In one hand, humanity had just as much right as any other species to rise and join the galactic community. But on the other hand, anaphid humanity would grow to be a warmongering nation. Many compare them to the Homer species whose cultures ought war, who until they had a greater enemy in the other species in the galaxy tonight. Against they decided to satisfy this thirst for war by fighting each other. They feared their humanity was much the same a blue. Thirsty culture seeking war so much that they would divide and fight amongst themselves to satisfy it, only to unify and turn their war last against the other species in the galaxy. The difference between the Homer and humanity in the galactic castle's eyes were that while Homer had been subduing diplomacy, rather than solely war, as a means of negotiating, though violence was always their first answer, and much of their diplomacy was intimidation. Humanity, on the other hand, they feared they wouldn't be able to. Some within the council suggested termina ting humanity while they were still young before they could become a threat. This led to semi-frequent debates among the council as the issue was delayed, again and again, until eventually a nation would take it into their own hands. Shunvatha nation, whose example they used to justify exterminating humanity, having a vivid supporter of terminating humanity, while he was young, tired of the cancer's constant delaying of the issue, and never having fully cared for the cancer's authority home, for decided to send a grand destroyer with fighter escorts to burn the planes to the ground, and at the very least knock humanity back several generations. These ships would never return. Both impatient and worried, Humber decided against holding back sending a mothership to go exterminate. Humanity motherships are one of the largest ships in any nation's fleet. Many humans were later referred to the mass-pace aircraft carriers. They generally were equivalent in size to moderate-sized cities, who are basically support for and a season for the entire fleet of ships, while the mothership itself could pack a punch. It primarily functions as a portable military base. Honda had one of the highest mothership counts in the Galaxy S7, which, due to their size, were quite expensive to make, and Ma intended to send an entire mothership to take out what was her species that had wholly left their home planet was deemed as overkill, and while they could hide their attempt to exterminate humanity, back when it was simply for ships, they could not hide it themselves, sending an entire mothership. By the time the castle found out, however, the ship was already nearing Earth, this time told to constantly report any information it learns. As the ship approached, it received a single signal from humanity, one which they never bothered translating but would later be translated T. Oriad turned back. Now would not he had this warning. However, notices something strange. Despite humanity reportedly having nothing more than satellites the last time they were surveyed, they now had a small fleet of spaceships or bike crewed guarding themselves. Ultimately, this ship should have gradually taken out, though not without inflicting a decent amount of damage and casualties to the Honda fleet towards the end of the battle. The mothership would begin sending positive reports detailing their gradual victories over the much weaker human fleet. Eventually, tailing humanity's fleet, a seemingly incomplete tatters. We've calculated well over 70 of their fleets is either completely destroyed or less severely damaged. It would appear that humanity has resorted to utilizing their more primitive rocket technology in suicidal attacks. Orshos are more than capable of withstanding any basic clump of metal, trying to slam into it. Victories assured, preparing to commence the termination process. This was the last signal the mothership would give off. A little over 5 minutes later, they would receive a waiver. Signals some incomprehensible whoever most gave off facing a uniform signal SOS, or rather the Humber, equivalent of all the signals received, only one seemed to give areas and Y reporting. Mothership destroyed attempting retreat. This was an intergalactic embarrassment for Hamva, but it was also a terrifying revelation. Humanity somehow had the ability to wipe out an entire mothership in minutes. The exclusion zone was extended further, and the Hanvau was shunned and crippled diplomatically for roughly 20 years. That was it. However, no attempts were made to communicate or vengunner humanity, and Hanvau was not about to risk any more motherships trying to take down a mysteriously powerful threat after those roughly 20 years. However, the border regions of Hanver would revive a distress signal. One only these went under attack. Honda mobilized, however, called their forces back, grouping together all 6 of their remaining motherships into a single fleet as they realized the threat from seemingly now where-free motherships had merged. These motherships were crude, bulky, and blocky, and while they were fairly technologically behind, especially in the shooting department, that mattered little as the ship was easy, the most heavily armored of any mothership aerialization struck Hunva, and the Galaxy humanity had reverse-engineered their technology, and now they were going on the offensive. The motherships of both nations clashed, the battle lasting an incredibly long time, scaling a vast stretch of area. Up until this day, it is one of the largest battles in galactic history by just a sheer number of ships and motherships alone. Just as before, however, the bulkier and slower human ships, while improved from last time, were slowly being defeated, their bulky armor not enough to make up for their poor mobility. The motherships too found themselves being notably damaged after a while. However, to humanity, as will later be learned, this was hardly a battle. It was a training exercise after humanity determined it had enough 6 rockets launched, 2 from each mothership, as 4 hit their targets, engulfing them into the power of the sun. As humanity gently referred to it, has 2 rockets were successfully shot down. However, humanity fired again. This time, only 1 is shot down now. With only 1 mothership out of their former 7, they attempted to flee. However, in doing, soonly left themselves vulnerable, and they tower destroyed with the loudest portion of their feet destroyed in minutes. Humanity flew mostly uncontested in occupying most of Hamba's remaining territory. Eventually they reached the capital where a new ship named the Apollo and ed on its surface to accept Honda surrender upon first taking their steps on the capital. Humanity acted out a homage of sorts to their first landing beyond their home planet before accepting the unconditional surrender of Hamba. It was here that many expected Humberto be conquered, their people enslaved, and their planet seized as a base for humanity's coming conquests and truth. However, humanity was highly lenient, seeking no punishment to the nation or the people, rather much more so to his leaders. Two Heist leaders upon the surrender of Honda abroad, cast was sent to the council in numerous languages, including human languages and the languages of all major races in the galaxy. Reading this message is broadcast on behalf of humanity. We've accepted the total and unconditional surrender of Hanva to the United States Space Force on behalf of the United Nations and mankind. We do not seek war, though we seek peace to all those willing to accept it. However, we could not tolerate a deliberate attack and attempt to destroy your home planet, the fate of the nation of Hanva. Istobe determined over the coming weeks, however its leadership has already been deposed. While we acknowledge we're not signatures of the many intergalactic treaties signed, we have been informed through Honduras prisoners of war of the details of said treaties, a desire to try the leadership of Hanva for violations of these treaties. We fully accept their refusal of this request. However, if it is refused, we will trial them under the laws and regulations established by human international law. We come in peace, but we're ready for war. Their quest for trial was accepted primarily as they don't want to anger the people who are just white out 6 motherships in minutes. However, what was so generally surprising was how they treated Hanva for one. Noland was conquered while territories taken by Humber were returned to former owners. After some negotiations with said former owners, none of their core territory was taken. The government, however, was adapted and was forged into a democracy, over time through interaction with humanity, in particular humanity's investments in rebuilding facilities damaged by the war. The Hond Urasa grew out of their warlike culture, with no aggressive government to fuel that aggressive beliefs, and with a friendly partner to trade and interact with the hostile nature of Honduras, have cited to owning the most racial corners of Homer's political scene. In the years following, humanity proved itself to be a friendly member of the galactic community. Much of the Council's relief, eventually joining the Council as a member state shortly after Earth's unification. I buy it's one that came about after a war on it. Humber would grow to be one of humanity's closest friends. Zandalis. Now humanity eventually decommissioned their secret weapon, referring it to being a weapon which nearly destroyed themselves several times over digging into human history. Most historians this weapon to have been the nuclear bomb, weapon whose methods of how it worked were thoroughly erased from all documentation, and their internet asked to erase them for good, until someone else invents the most likely. In the end, what was once fair to be a danger to galactic stability ended up being easily one of the friendliest factions in the ALAC, yet at the same time a faction more than willing to take up arms and obliterate any further wrongs them or their allies. After a while, many species took a sentence for humanity's first broadcast and began to use it frequently to describe humanity, a people of peace, yet ready for war.